Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, Snap. There's some more malware found in snaps. And obviously this has happened once in the past. It happened a number of years ago based on an article on 15th of May, 2018. So it's been 5 years since some malware has been confirmed, but there has been some confirmed, and we kind of want to talk about this. Now, we're going to go slightly easy, but we still have to recognize that Canonical's plan of forcing and cramming Snap, relying entirely on it, and desiring an app store the size of the iStore and Google Play and all these is the contributing factor here. So let's go ahead and hit what's going down here. So, Phoronix, Canonical Snap Store hit by malicious apps. Note the plural, apps. And hilariously, they're not telling us which ones they are. Do I have them installed? How fun. So, stemming from reports of several fake crypto apps appearing in Canonical Snap Store that aimed to steal user funds, temporary restrictions have been put in place while Canonical investigates. So, it took several reports from multiple fake apps in the Snap Store for Canonical to do something. Let that first sink in. Due to Snap users reporting several recently published snaps that are potentially malicious in stealing user crypto funds, the Snap Store removed the reported snaps. Didn't tell us which ones they are, which will mean you can't install them in the future, but if you already have them installed, you may or may not get a notice about this. I don't know. I have no idea what happens when a snap is unpublished. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. A temporary manual review requirement has been put in place on new Snap registrations. The manual review is intended to thwart bad actors from registering names of legitimate applications, or at least legitimate sounding names. This has been something I have been talking about since that article first came out in 2018. Simple screen recorder. You go to Snap Store right now, simple screen recorder, there are multiple applications. None of them are put there by the person who actually creates that program. Think about that one. So this is from their post. So let's just go ahead and look directly at their blog post. Now, this is actually, there's nothing on their blog about it. So if we go down to their blog post, their latest features is, hey, Snap IO Reloaded. Check out the new look and feel, improving Snap maintenance and automation. Release management for Snaps made simple. Firefox Snap updates and upgrades. There is nothing on their blog about this. It is buried inside of a forum post. That is it. A forum post. It's the only place you get any of this. Would you get out of there? Build a better website. Let me pull up the forum here. So if you go to the main forum, this is where that one is down there. It's this one here that's grayed out. I'm not sure if it's grayed out because I've visited that one or if it's grayed out for some other reason. I don't know. But the forum post says on September 28th, 2023, Snap team was notified of a potential security incident. A number of Snap users reported several recently published and potentially malicious snaps. As a consequence of these reports, the Snap Store team has immediately taken down these snaps. They can no longer be searched or installed. Furthermore, the Snap Store team has placed a temporary manual review requirement on all new Snap registrations effective immediately. If you try to register a new Snap while the requirement is active, you will be prompted to request reserved name. Upon successful manual review from the Snap Store staff, the name will be registered. Uploading and releasing revisions for existing snaps will not be affected. So if you already have gotten your way into there and now your next plan is to upload your malicious snaps, now you can freely do that. They won't be watching you. They'll be watching the new guys. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause to our Snap publishers and developers. However, we believe it's the most prudent action at this moment. We want to thoroughly investigate the incident without introducing any noise in the system. And more importantly, we want to make sure our users have a safe and trusted experience with the Snap Store. Please bear with us while we conduct the investigation and provide a more detailed update in the coming days. I guess here's a link to these, and here's a link to these two here. I did not see these earlier when I was looking at this. So any idea how long the review process will take? They respond back. It won't take more than a business day, indicating that this particular person's request has been approved. And now, as of 1 day ago, as we continue to investigate, they have decided to lift the restriction on new Snap registration, so there's no longer a restriction. Instead, they'll be conducting daily reviews of any new Snaps being uploaded. We will flag, investigate, and take down any Snap that looks suspicious. So you can now upload, and after the Snaps are already uploaded and into the system and available for download, then they're going to look at them later, which is another train wreck in and of itself. We're taking this action to remove the friction from the Snap publishing experience while still closely monitoring what has been uploaded on a regular basis. We are discussing methods to prevent this situation. And then there's a few things. These are just like, which Snap, what's Snapcraft, tell me how it works. There's just stuff there. Here's various APKs. So those look like spam. Those legitimate look like spam, so that's good. All right, here is the discussion here. These are the fake apps. Okay, so they told us these on a separate thread. Snapcraft Ledger 1, Trezor Wallet, and Electrum Wallet 2. So this has already happened for another set. Those will be handled immediately too. Phishing apps, so that's these ones over here. Ledger Lift app is a phishing app disguised to look like an official app for ledger.com. The way it works is look for queries, U for your backup code, a list of words, and a dumb lapse of judgment. I was scammed by this app and lost a substantial amount of money. What worries me more is that my computer password files could be compromised, but if I understand it correctly, Snaps are isolated somehow. Could it have read my file system? What do you recommend I do? Obviously, if you have that installed, just uninstall the Snap. Snaps don't have access to the root or hidden files. That means it could have read non-hidden files in some directory. Snap Connections Ledger Live command should list all of the interfaces the Snap uses. So we have a couple of the Snaps available. So how did these guys get in? That raises kind of the question. Now, when this issue was addressed, and I addressed this in the past, this is the blog post that I referred back to several times in several videos. May 15th, 2018. And this is after some malicious apps were found in their store in the past. And my concern with this down here is, and they went through, and I've covered this article in more detail late in the past, but what they wanted to do is they mentioned in here that instead of trusting the software itself, it is particularly useful to be able to say more accurately, we are trusting the software with. It's better to say we trust Pauline's software to access the camera than to have a binary view of trust. Technology implemented in the Snap packages is a major step in the right direction. But it boils down to what they're trying to say is they're not going to audit every Snap. They're going to trust the previous trusted user. So you upload a Snap, and when you upload the Snap, then you're going to, they're going to look at it more closely. After you've uploaded 3 or 4 Snaps, they don't find any issues, they're just going to let you upload them. That's why it's curious to me, did this come in because somebody did a plan where they uploaded 4 or 5 legitimate apps and then went ahead with the malicious one? Or was it just their other problem, we want as many apps on here as possible so everybody can get in there and do them, and really they're kind of playing the Google Play game. Let's investigate after we've received complaints rather than audit the software up front, which is what you get in repository software, which is why I do not like Snaps because of that. Let's see if this is the article I believe that has... find the various words trust. Snaps released by the publisher have since been unpublished and will be republished with proper content by a trusted party, but it raises some interesting questions. So what they're looking at is they want to trust here. Here's the paragraph I was looking for. The complexity of software means it's impossible for a large-scale repository to only accept software after every file has been reviewed in detail. That is a legitimate problem, but that is also Snap's problem that they want to have this massive store. They want to have 16 bajillion apps like the Apple Store has, like the Play Store has. And because they want to not be seen as having so few apps, which can be problematic for adoption, They want to have as many apps as possible. And so they're saying up front, yeah, we can't possibly have a large-scale repository without reviewing everything unless we trust the developer rather than software. That's true whether source code is available or not, as no institution can afford to review hundreds of thousands of incoming source code lines every single day. Because of that, the most successful trust model is based on the origin of software, not its content. In other words, trust the publisher rather than the application itself. That is where they got themselves into trouble, because they're trying to get as many applications in as possible, and they're accepting applications to publish snaps for software by people other than the software developers themselves. So I've used this in the past as I've discussed about some of the issues with the snaps, is if you go on to, for example, LibreOffice. LibreOffice has a snap available. And if you go to their website and you go to download options, and in LibreOffice's site says, hey, there's a snap version, I'm going to trust that snap version. I wouldn't have a problem with that because LibreOffice is aware of it. Their official site is linking to it, and the software was either published by them or I think in that case, I don't think they published it. I think Snapcraft itself published it. So the company behind Snap. I would completely trust that app because it is known by the individual developer. There's other ones I've looked at in the past that you look at all the download options and there is no mention of the Snap, yet you go to the Snap store and it's available and it's put up by somebody else. I don't trust that app nearly as much. Simple Screen Recorder is an example I've always traditionally used because it is a useful application. A lot of people look for it. The official creator of Simple Screen Recorder has never released a snap. There's no mention of a snap on his particular website, but there are multiple snap versions in the Snap store. And some are listed as Simple Screen Recorder, some are listed as Simple Screen Recorder Unofficial, some are listed as Simple Screen Recorder published by some guy in China. I'm sorry, I just don't have a lot of trust for this model. And that's exactly what Snap has said they're doing, is they're trusting the publisher rather than the application itself. Obviously, they want to audit a few of the publishers. Of course, my next big problem is, who are their trusted publishers? Facebook and Microsoft. And all those guys I kind of came to Linux to get away from. So I don't really trust them either, because while it may not be quote unquote malicious, it definitely violates the privacy standards that I would want for my particular system. So what has resulted, or what is the ultimate root cause? I wrote down a few interesting notes here. So they're pushing for mass app creation, and to do that, by their own article in 2018, they have to loosen the restrictions. You cannot have a store that is highly curated and highly voluminous without having some form of compromise. And that's really what they're doing, because they do not want to encounter a problem. Like what happens right now is, because the Play Store and the Apple Store have so many apps, the creation of a third-party app store is extraordinarily difficult because you have a hard time getting apps adopting into a third-party store. And because of that, what happens is the app store itself, people will go check it out. There's not a lot of apps, and so they just go back to their old regular and forget all about it. That's what Snap is trying to avoid. Unfortunately, we saw one other company do this, and that was Windows. Back before Windows 10 even came out, when they still had Windows 8 and they were pushing the Windows Store, there was a big problem that there was not an official Facebook app in the Windows Store. There was not an official Twitter app in the Windows Store. There were third-party apps created by other people that would do the job, but they weren't official, and they had a lot of bugs and a lot of problems. But Microsoft, being such a small store at that time, the companies did not want to develop the resources to push the software into the Microsoft Store, so the Microsoft Store became a bloated mess full of third-party broken garbage. And it maintained that way for a long time. The only way Windows was able to overcome that is because they still control 90+% of the computer market. And that's what they were forcing, and that gave them the leverage to convince people to put official apps in their store. Well, Canonical doesn't have that necessary thing, so they have to loosen the restrictions, allow anybody to put in apps, and what ends up being is third-party people having no relationship to the app itself or putting the app in unbeknownst to the app developers themselves. And so it releases some potential malware, it releases some potential bugs, and it releases some apps that people haven't really, at least the developer of the app haven't really necessarily audited. Now, again, if the publisher of the application on their website says, hey, there's a Snap available, I am way more inclined to trust that than if I happen to just find it in a Snap store. All right, so this is how it mirrored how Microsoft's launch is, but Snap with Ubuntu, it still just isn't big enough to push that as much. And it would appear that they seem to rubber stamp creators because they have to have a loose restriction in order to have a voluminous app store. You cannot have that tight curated store without having some degree of massive amounts of people putting things into there. So it would appear that they are doing the exact same that Google is doing. They're rubber stamping the snaps into the store and really only responding when there's malicious content discovered. That is a problematic thing. Very problematic. They need to stop doing that. But it's their model of trusting the developer really is easy to game because you can get in there, you can push the software, you can push 3 or 4 applications that are good, and then what will happen is Canonical just starts trusting you, you just start pushing up apps, and then eventually you slide in a couple malicious ones here and there and are able to get the malware passed because you are now a trusted developer. And then when somebody complains, then they look back in retrospective and then they go back and correct the issue down the road. So very few people, here's one of the problems that they have. Unlike Flatpak, which it's possible to get some malicious stuff in Flatpak too. I'm not aware of any malicious Flatpaks. If there are some, please let me know. I'd like to look into that. But the problem with it Snap has is that while the software packages themselves are open source, the number of people that can audit the apps in the development process and in the distribution process is extremely small because they have a proprietary distribution model. So we don't know what's going on behind that proprietary black box. While we can audit the app when it finally comes out, we don't have a way to audit the app before it is installed on our system. So in order to test our apps, we have to install them first and then see what happens. There might be a way around that. But the point being is that it's a lot more difficult to audit the apps utilizing Snap's model than it is utilizing Flatpak's model. So they are, again, trusting the creator and not the app. And they have now, of course, as we said, lifted the restriction, meaning that potential malicious software could be installed in your computer that they have not yet caught. So be very careful in downloading and installing any Snap packages that have been released in recent weeks. They could possibly have malware, and I think that Canonical has set themselves up for this by wanting to have a voluminous store, being able to rubber stamp things, and really only addressing issues ex post facto rather than on the upfront auditing code. And this is why auditing the software or using the software repository is always safer. So let me explain to you really briefly why they can audit the code in the repository and not necessarily audit the code in the snaps. It boils down to dependencies. While the software repository can lead to what we have called in Linux world dependency hell, in which case some software might work better on one dependency, but some other software works on a different dependency. The distribution supplies a third dependency, and you could potentially have an issue. The fact is, the one dependency installed is used for a broader range of apps, so you can audit that dependency once and then not worry about it because you know that is audited, and now you just have to audit the code around that dependency, which is a way better job than a snap, which you have to audit every dependency that comes packaged with it in addition to the code itself. In other words, you have to audit a whole lot more in a snap package than you do in a repository package, and that is why a repository package is always more secure. You have a better chance that it has been audited. So if you're going to install software, always install from the repository of your distribution first. Don't go onto the internet to look for things unless you absolutely have to, and then you have to use a lot of caution. I'll remind you again, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the download manager software, which is available in a deb package. 1 out of 4 of those distributed as determined by the website based on a certain fingerprint of your system, were malicious. It didn't do everyone malicious, so security researchers weren't able to find it as easily. But about 1 in 4 downloads of that software were malicious because their WordPress website was hacked to run malicious code after a few different audit checks on the fingerprinting of the browser requesting the download. And so we are safest using repository software. I'd say outside of that, I think Flatpak is a much more trusted model than is Snapcraft. Although there are certainly some Snapcraft apps I would completely trust on that line. If it's produced by Snapcraft, I will trust it. If it's produced by the official software producer, as long as I trust that software, yes, in that case, I will also trust that as well. But this model that they have to get as big of a store as possible with loosening restrictions and rubber stamping creators and only looking into things after a complaint has been made, that is what has set up Snap for failure. So hopefully that was a helpful video to explain some of the things going around. And once again, Switch to Linux finds himself justified in saying, hold your brakes on those snaps. And this is why I have personally moved away from Ubuntu, just because I'm just sick of this snap stuff being pushed in with a low trust model. So with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.